Excellent. Please come, please come. Keep chatting amongst yourselves. All right. Welcome back to the Ninja Arena. Hope you had fun. Hope you had a good feed. Hope you managed to meet some people. So it is time for the Ninja activity. And yesterday, who played Ninja Bingo yesterday with us? I think a few more of you played with us yesterday. But yes, it was fun. We're not going to do that again because you already know all the secrets and you know everybody's traits. So we're going to do something different today. And given that a lot of people are still chatting away or are out there, and I'd love them to participate as well, we're going to play a game that we've played all over the world at all of our events, and it seems to be pretty popular. It's called the Ninja Photo Challenge. Okay? Ooh, cool title, I know. Ninja Photo Challenge. Okay? So as you can probably guess, it has to do with taking a photo. And just to entice you, before I tell you what the game or the rules are, the prizes today are way better than yesterday's prizes. Okay? So yesterday we had a mixture of stuff because we just kind of threw it together, or I kind of threw it together from our different sponsors and supporters. But today, Joanna, GC of SLR Luxottica, the brand that basically owns all the sunglass brands in the world, but she didn't let me say that because it sounds like she has a monopoly, which would get her into trouble with the authorities. But yes, Ray-Bans, all those cool brands that you know for sunglasses, she makes them by hand. So she has donated 4 pairs of premium sunglasses for us. So we're going to have 4 winners today. All right, so that's pretty cool, I think, and they're worth quite a lot of money. So here's the challenge, okay? So I've got 2 prizes of 2 sunglasses. So you got to work in pairs for this challenge, okay? But I just saw people saying, oh yeah, I'll do it with you. I know you really well. No. You got to do it with someone you don't know, okay? Find somebody you don't know or don't know that well. You can, team up with those people out there, the sponsors, those people who you may not have spoken to yet, so chat to them as well. But find a pair, take a selfie, or you can go to the photo booth and take a photo there as well. And you have to post it on LinkedIn and tag yourselves, and tag me as well, just so I can see the photo. And then in an hour, I will announce the winners. Now, to win the challenge, obviously, if you're good looking, that helps, but that's not the criteria. What helps is a creative caption, okay? Your photo can be of whatever you want it to be. It has to have you in it. But the caption is what we're looking for. So something creative, something funny, okay? and you're going to win sunglasses. I mean, this is the best prize I think we've ever had. And I'll throw in some more stuff from our other sponsors in the goodie bag, okay? So just to recap, you got to take a selfie of you and another person that you don't know that well, and you got to post it on LinkedIn, tag each other, and tag me, and you have 15 minutes to do it. Starting now. Go! We get some music as well. All right, so 13 minutes left to go. Yes, that was a very quick 2 minutes. Let's go. The sunglasses are very special, just so you know. They are very, very special. Joanna picked them herself. I can see this whole group just chatting and not taking any photos. That's okay. The less competitors, the higher the probability of the people competing that they will win. All right. Come on, Team New Zealand. I can see you in the corner here. You can take a selfie of 3 people as well. It's fine. All right, I can see new friends being made. Photos, photos, photos. Head over to the photo booth. I can see that it's available as well. Photo booth photos are pretty fun and creative. Let's go, 10 minutes left, 10 minutes. Priya and Catherine, have you taken a photo yet? Excellent. All right, this VIP row at the front, I don't see any cameras. All right. Law Squared team, have you taken a photo? If you don't like anyone in this room, head outside and take a photo with someone outside. All right, Joanna's back. She's going to help me judge the winner as well. Take a photo, post it up, tag each other, tag me just so that I can see it. That's it. If you do it on the stage, you get a bonus point. Excellent, all right. Team Alpha here is doing really well. They're taking lots of photographs of each other while sitting down, so they're lazy just like me, which is great. Team Beta, I can see them working away on their LinkedIn and trying to find out how to tag people on LinkedIn, which is great as well. You have 4 minutes, 4 minutes. Let's go, let's go. 2 minutes, 2 minutes. 2 minutes. All right, you have 1 minute, 1 minute. If you haven't taken a photo yet, just take the photo and then just save it to your phone for posterity so that you can remember the friend you made at the Law Ninjas conference in Sydney. Yes, you've got the look, you've got the look. All right, that's it, that's it. 30 seconds, 30 seconds. Take that selfie, 30 seconds. All right, let's close that up. Okay, so it's cool if you haven't posted it yet, as long as you've taken the photograph, post it on LinkedIn if you get a chance during the next couple of sessions, because in an hour, I'll take a look through LinkedIn and Joanna and I will decide the winners. And just to repeat, the winners receive sunglasses from Essilor Luxottica, and they are amazing. I have had a look at them. They are brilliant. So thank you so much, Joanna, again. All right, let's kick it off with our next session. And straight from lunch into reflecting on critical ethical moments for legal professionals. So now what's really cool about this session is, as you know, there's always that CPD point that you can't get about ethics. Now, although this 15-minute session is not going to give you the whole point, what Kate, our speaker, has done, and which I'll show you at the end as well, is if you scan that QR code at the end, you can go to her 1-hour CPD session on ethics, so you'll get that point. But without further ado, please welcome Kate Peterson, partner at McCullough Robertson. Big round of applause, please.
I really should have planned for this walk-up music a bit better. Right. Ninjas, hello. Thank you for having me. My immediate reflection was maybe we needed to work more on a punchy title. So maybe my revised title is what you can learn from juicy, awful, difficult stories that other lawyers have been through and survived. So For reasons that I don't entirely understand, legal ethics is often positioned as this dry chore that you have to do. You got to get your point. And that can produce an approach that says things like, you know, you really shouldn't steal your client's money. Yep. And if you're meant to be in court, you're meant to go. And if you're not going to go, you have to tell them. So this kind of like helpful professional advice that hopefully no one in this room really needs. And I find that surprising, that dry sort of rules-based approach, because actually legal ethics is the one thing that all of us do every single day. And also it's the one thing that if we do it wrong is probably career-ending, reputation-shattering, one of the most sort of profound errors that you can make. And so I wanted to tip that sort of dry approach on its head a little bit in the brief time that I have to talk today, and do that by doing three things. The first of those is to layer up a bit of a story, a bit of a saga to consider and place yourself in the shoes of others. Secondly, to give you 5 pieces of advice or things to chew on and think on off the back of that story. And if I haven't kind of engaged you by that point, I'll finish with a little juicy adage, a bit of a tidbit from a real world example, which has certainly stayed in my mind. So that's the plan. The story, first of all. So it's 7 o'clock, you're at your desk, you're acting GC. It's a step-up opportunity, as the famous phrase goes, and you're very anxious to own that position, be emphatic, be effective. And one of the reasons it feels like a real step-up opportunity is you feel a little bit of an outlier at your organisation. You look around the other C-suite people, the other influencers and sort of board, and you look around you and you feel less grey hair, less male, less white, less fill in the blank for what might make you feel personally a little bit wrong-footed, a little bit perhaps unsafe or out of your comfort zone. And those people around you make you feel it. So you feel it every day, that sense that you're sort of questioned as a pretender, questioned as to whether you deserve to be there. And so what's the work? What's the legal work that is at issue in this story? Well, it's a piece of advice you did a few months ago, and it's complex, it's important, the details don't matter. It relates to some options and incentives that were being considered in the hope of a significant transaction coming and being a great white knight happy moment for your organisation. So you were tasked with this advice. You've delivered that paper some time ago, identifying that various aspects of it unlawful, and that a key document or piece of information that you need by way of instructions is missing from the brief you've got from the business. And so that's the work you've done before. And it's 7 o'clock, and 10 minutes ago you texted your loved ones, you're running late, I'm leaving soon. But the phone rings, and it's the CFO, and they said, I'm glad I caught you. I need to talk to you about that advice. It's back up on the chair's agenda. It's getting a lot of focus. There's a real transaction in the wings now, and that is a real difficulty for us. It's a real awkward point. And you know that transaction has gone from theoretical to real, and you know that this incentive idea is intended to lock in key executives. There's complex trust arrangements, there's payments that are proposed where there's no real money at risk. There's a brush of too cute by half to this idea. And so you have this phone call, and he says, yeah, your advice, it's too rigid. I mean, it's really important that you manage appearances in a role like GC. You need to be an influencer. You don't want to be a blocker. You don't want to be seen as the person who's saying no. You get it, don't you? It's an issue. There's a real pause. He says, I'll send you some stuff. And you pause again. And you sort of swallow it and say, okay, I'll look into it. Yep, no problem. You get off the phone and two things happen. You get sent a spreadsheet of those who are in the tent on this option scheme, and your name's on the list. So you're one of the ones that's getting this feathered nest in the proposal. And secondly, you get a chat message from that same person you've just hung up the phone with, saying, oh yeah, by the way, just position it as a fresh paper. We don't want the optics to seem like we're flip-flopping on this. Just start again from scratch. We'll clean it up. That missing piece, you haven't got it, just move on. So you go out, you meet your friends and family, you sit on it for a while, and the board meeting where that revised paper is expected comes closer and closer. You talk to a friend, a trusted colleague, and you bang on about it. You say, this is outrageous, that guy, he's such a weasel. He put the pressure on, the way he said it. I was halfway out the door, no arrangement to speak. And you talk a lot about how uncomfortable this is. You don't talk a lot about the substance and the actual work that is being requested of you, but you talk a lot about, it gets too close to the meeting, you're chased for the work, and you kind of bite the bullet. You rewrite that and you change sort of unlawfuls to arguables, and you change no's to sort of messy words that could be interpreted as a permissive yes. You insert some qualifiers saying that all of this is subject to other instruction or change, and you send it off at the 11th hour to get it off your plate, to get it out of your life. You go to the board meeting, it's waved through, it's uncomfortable, and there you are. You've done it. You've got through that difficult ethical squeeze. So I've laid up that story with some obvious pinch points that all of us know from busy practice and the challenge of the work we do. But another thing I've done in that story is draw on my own experience in conducting whistleblower and corruption inquiries. That's a big part of the work that I do. And one of the privileges and interesting parts about that is that my work involves conducting those inquiries and sitting down with a person and saying to them, on what basis did you think that was a reasonable cause of action? Explain yourself. Meet these allegations of corruption or integrity or probity misfeasance. And that role of confronting someone with their own behaviour is a really powerful one and a really privileged position to sometimes see in real life. That moment where the dry guardrails about ethical practice and how lawyers should conduct themselves really hit the road. And I see in real time the moment of someone realising, and I've had people say this to me, when you put it like that, it sounds really bad. So what can I offer you from those stories and from that experience that I have? There's 5 things. The first of those is that ethics is not what your gut tells you. Your gut's a real mixed bag. Your gut's kind of doesn't like awkwardness. Your gut wants to get out of trouble. Your gut wants it over as quickly and painlessly as possible. Your gut wants to be in harmony with those around you. It wants to have a nicer, more pleasant time with the people that you work with. So that's my first sort of tip or caution, I suppose. The second is to think about who are your go-to ethical sounding boards. So in my saga, I said there was a lot of whinging and there was a lot of venting about this, difficult behaviour. But who are the people that are available to you to do that consultative conversation of saying, this feels wrong, we've all got a full plate, we've all got a lot to do, but I've got to make space to actually think about how this sort of crushes down as an ethical issue. And one of the great things, I suppose, about the gathering today is that maybe the Law Ninja Network is part of that, of like finding people who can be part of that reference group. The third thing that I would say is to really think about the tools that you have to work out what is right in those situations. And we have the fortunate position of having those guardrails in conduct rules and cardinal principles about being honest, being diligent, keeping confidential information. You know, we have that dry stuff that I mentioned at the start, so we have that as a reference point. But to really think about having that toolkit of what is at risk here. Is this a matter about conflict of interest? Is this a matter about accuracy and integrity? And having that sort of slow thinking about ethical moments, having that toolkit to go, okay, how can I, with that support crew, work through this? The fourth thing I'd mention is, I guess, a challenge that is a really obvious statement for in-house practice, but to know where the boundaries of the legal advice piece, the strategic piece, the risk piece is, and then the decision making that the organisation might make. So you'll recall in my example, I mentioned that there was this sort of operational, commercial significance to what was being considered, and all of us have encountered that, right? That the inconvenient advice is really pulling up on something that's thought to be commercially important. Related to that is sort of owning the power of the role that you have. You might have also noticed that I mentioned that you were acting in your job. That comes from real life. For those of you that have had any attention to the robo-debt sort of scandal in the Commonwealth Government, it's a key piece of time there where legal advice that could and should have stopped that was kept in draft, was requested, instructions were drafted to AGS that weren't sent, and all of that happened over a particular few-week period in early 2017, a period where a lot of people were on summer holidays, a lot of people were acting up in their jobs for the first time, and there had been that sense of like, well, I'm filling the seat, it's not for me to make these calls, and that's something that history can judge pretty acutely now, where those decisions were part of a pretty huge betrayal of our sort of public interest. So that sense of knowing those boundaries and sort of owning them, and that leads into the last point, which is to get comfortable with the friction of doing our jobs well, right? To feel that perhaps our guts might tell us that harmony is the right priority, but to accept that doing our difficult jobs well might involve being uncomfortable and causing that discomfort to the organisations or individuals that sort of rely on us and sit around our work. So those are my 5 tips. As Rowan mentioned, this is sort of a brief on a longer presentation I did a few months ago and is available. I caused a bit of alarm. I'm new at McCullough Robertson. I've been there about a year. And I caused a bit of an alarm where I said, oh yeah, I'll do the ethics talk, no problems, I love this stuff. My topic is 6 easy ways to be corrupt. And I had a few people go, oh, is that a typo? Is that meant to be like not? I think we're not meant to be corrupt. But that's the premise of that session. So it comes from a philosophy article that's quite well known, a woman philosopher writing about how 6 very human, very useful traits that we all have that help us in life, focusing on the short term, focusing on harmony in relationships, these psychological trends that are kind of inevitable and really useful are also really dangerous in terms of integrity and corruption and sort of your decisions miscarrying. So if that's of interest to you, you're welcome to share that with you or your teams, and I'm not too shy to say you can get the points, so, you know, if I'm doling out points, that's fine too. And then the final thing I wanted to say is just to share a really simplistic one, and this partly comes from Georgie yesterday saying that we had permission to say rude words, so it's good to know. I hope that applies to me as well. And this is just an anecdote from the Lawyer X scandal. I don't know if all of you are familiar with that, but that's the Victorian barrister who was a police informant for many, many years. She was representing sort of gangland, serious criminal figures at the same time as informing on those individuals to the police. That started when she was at law school. She got a high distinction in legal ethics, just as a little fun fact for you. And then was this police informant for many years. And 14 years before that became public, and it became public in a pretty high impact way. It's been the subject of a Royal Commission, 20 odd criminal cases have been overturned, really seriously unpleasant people have been released from jail. But 14 years before that happened, there's a recorded interaction between her and her handlers at the police saying, man, this is pretty ethically fucked, isn't it? And the cops say to her, oh yeah, but like no one's going to know about it. So yeah, let's just press on. And so 14 years later, Royal Commissions and so on. So, I mean, I say it in jest, but if you do find those words fumbling to the front of your mind or the front of your mouth, hopefully those 5 tips could be helpful to you. So thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks so much. Kate, while we've got you, any questions about ethics or anything that Kate said? Any questions that you can think of? Any unethical things you're thinking of doing? Any corruption?
There's been some serious bluey hunting out there. I don't want to name names, but there was definitely some scheming to get blueies that, you know.
Excellent. We've got 2 blueies here as well. No questions? Okay. So
Thanks,
Kate's really friendly. She's really approachable. She's usually at the McCullough Robertson desk just out there. So do find her if you want to get that 1 CPD point. There's also the QR code up there. So do scan that because then you can go to her full session. But thanks so much, Kate. Big round of applause again, please, for Kate Peterson. Excellent. I'm going to leave that on for 5 more seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good. Okay, so our next keynote, and then we have 2 panels, and then we're done. So after party time. So you're almost there, almost there. By the way, LinkedIn is blowing up right now, in case you haven't seen. My phone's almost like, about to collapse because there's just so much going on. Thank you so much for all the people who took the photos. If you weren't in the room when the ninja activity was happening, this makes no sense to you, but that's okay. We are taking lots of photos and we're tagging each other, and it's been great to see all of your smiling faces at the summit. So the next session, another 15-minute keynote, is on when every second counts, co-counsel for rapid and precise data breach management. And our speaker is Ziggy Cheng, Senior Sales Specialist for Legal at Thomson Reuters. Big round of applause for Ziggy, please. All right, while we're setting up, if you haven't posted your photo on LinkedIn yet, please do. Just to let you know, one of the leading contenders is a ginger ninja. He spelled ninja incorrectly, so please do fix it because it looks a bit controversial the way you've spelled it.
Yep. Display.
But it's okay, you get bonus points for effort. We've also got lots of other ninjas up on LinkedIn right now, so thank you for all the action. By the way, favorite ice cream flavor so far, or the 2 days, if you've attended both days, or even if you just attended today, favorite ice cream flavor, who had ice cream here? Did you have ice cream? Did you have ice cream? Which one?
Milo.
Milo, okay, good choice, good choice. Any other option?
Hazelnut.
Hazelnut, I do like hazelnut, yes. Shirley, did you have ice cream? Ooh, okay. No? No ice cream? Can't remember the flavor. That's how many flavors Rebecca had. Excellent. All right, okay. 2 flavors. Cool. This is me riffing right now, so let's keep doing that for the next few minutes. So the next couple of sessions after this, just so you know what's coming up. So we've got this keynote by Thomson Reuters. Then if you want to stay in this room and listen to how to manage psychosocial hazards, that's next. And then if you don't want to stay in this room, the workshop downstairs is the challenges of being a parent and a GC. And the speakers there are from Day One Recruitment, Collective Wellness Group, Novo Nordisk, American Express, and REA Group. So parent and GC. I'm a parent. I'm not a GC, and my life's pretty hard. So I don't even know what it's like to be a parent and a GC. That would be really hard. And then the final session of the day is right here, how to understand the Privacy Act reforms.
That's on here.
So pretty important to know. And then the workshop downstairs is how to level up from legal counsel to general counsel. So if you're a legal counsel, that's going to be super useful for you. But even if you're not, I think you'll learn a lot of lessons about how to level up in your career. So, Ziggy, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Excellent. Over to you,
that
Ziggy.
thing to be ready. I'll crack some jokes
Oh,
in the
excellent.
meantime.
All right. Just getting set.
I mean, everyone can kind of see on these screens, so maybe I'll just get going and we can see if that will work eventually. Who knows?
It's okay. Give us a minute.
Okay.
I'd love for people to see it. But maybe, Ziggy, if you could tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Thomson Reuters and co-counsel, to the extent it doesn't clash with what you're about to already.
Yeah, no problem. So hi, everyone. My name's Ziggy. I work on the co-counsel team at Thomson Reuters, which is our legal AI assistant. This is our flagship AI product at Thomson Reuters. It's a big surprise. I'm talking about AI today. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of this before. But it's been in market now, in the Australian market, for about 2 years. So we have learned a lot of things about not just how these tools work, but how lawyers are using it. And there has been a lot of adoption across this market in particular. And as a result of that adoption, we have listened and we've learned and we've had to take things to heart. And we've changed the product quite a lot. And actually, we're about to once again change the product in the next couple of months. What I'm going to show you today is a very specific use case of how people are actually using this tool today. When we first brought this thing out, we talked a lot about features, functionality, it can do this particular skill, it can do that particular skill, and we quickly learned that it doesn't matter to the lawyers what the tool can do in isolation, it matters how they can use it, right? And so we started to change our thinking a little bit. Instead of calling it, well, I started to change my thinking at least. Instead of calling it artificial intelligence, I like to call it augmented intelligence. The truth about these tools is that they're not as smart as we all think they are. I would argue that they're actually kind of dumb, but they will listen to your instructions very, very literally, and they work very, very hard, right? And so what's important is not thinking about what can the tool do, but it's more about how can I use this tool to supplement my own intelligence. And so I call it augmented intelligence, right? Because the lawyer is the person applying their own wisdom and judgment. It's a lawyer who's gone to law school, built up all of their own internal IP and knowledge and experience over the decades that you've been practicing. It's not the tools, but the tools will work very, very hard, and they do some really, really cool things. So now when we show co-counsel and we talk about AI, we really talk about how are you using it. We're not trying to tell you this is how you should use it. So today I'm going to talk to you about, or I'm going to show you, hey, there we go, excellent. I'm going to show you how to respond to a data breach. So I want everyone to close your eyes. No, I'm joking, don't do that. I want everyone to imagine for a second here, you're a general counsel, you work for a very large organization, and it's 8 o'clock at night, Friday evening, you've had 5 wines, and your CEO calls you, very, frizzled and, a little bit out of breath and, it's a bit suspicious, but he says, hey, I've just had a call from our IT department. We've detected some suspicious activity on one of our servers. We're looking into it right now, but I need you to explain to me immediately what are our obligations when it comes to data breaches, right? Send me an email straight away. Hangs up. You go, oh, great, okay, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? Go start opening books or go to our Westlaw platform? Well, what you can do is you can ask AI. So I've got co-counsel here in front of you, and just before I jump into that, I just want to explain what co-counsel can do and what a legal AI assistant actually is. Think of it like this. It's like a very, very advanced search that will take your instructions and produce the results back to you in a way that is useful for whatever work that you're doing, right? Very, very advanced. But because this is a Thomson Reuters tool, we haven't allowed it to go out to the internet to search for answers. It can only find its answers in the documents that you feed it or our own proprietary content databases. That's Westlaw, Practical Law, this is all jurisdictional specific information, right? So it's grounding its answers in content, which is why we call this content-driven artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence. So I'm going to go into co-counsel, and I'm going to say, what is considered, or what constitutes, let's go with that. What constitutes a data breach in Australia? I'm just going to ask it. And what it's going to do is it's going to realize that this is a legal research question. It's not going to, try to create you a timeline or, draft you a document or something. It knows it's a legal research question, and I'm going to click on Start AI Assisted Research Australia. This is going into our Westlaw database to search for the answers. Of course, we have connections into practical law as well, document management systems, if you guys use SharePoint or whatever. We can do that too. We can search your own internal knowledge. And so this is going to go out to our database, find the information, and present it back. But I also realize, okay, that's a good question. I need to know what constitutes a data breach, so I know if what's happening is actually a data breach. But I also want to know my obligations. So at the same time, I'm going to say, what are my obligations when there is a data breach at my organization, let's just say, in Australia. Now, I'm writing in Australia to my prompts because I've connected to a whole bunch of global databases in the US and UK. So if you are a large organization, you do need to do sort of cross-jurisdictional research. Of course, you can do that. But if you only have access to the Australian ones, it'll just start searching straight away. You don't really need to worry about it. But let's take a look at this answer. Fantastic. We've got some stuff here. We could sit here and read it, but that's pretty boring. But what we always say at Thomson Reuters is the AI is really good, but you cannot just trust what comes out of the AI. It is your job as a lawyer to verify, and this is not just about verifying for accuracy. You'll know from reading all of those benchmarking studies, external and Thomson Reuters ones, we're pretty much on parity now when it comes to the AI versus human benchmarking, right? But that's not what this is about. You need to verify to understand how the AI got to its answer. And that's why we have ingrained it within the philosophy of all of our tools, to keep the human in the loop and to make it really easy and really quick to check the work that's coming out of the AI. I'll click on this little footnote over here, and it's going to open up all of the references where it got its answers from. In this case, the Privacy Act, 1988. I can see an exact excerpt. I can go down and look at some other stuff here, some case law perhaps, maybe. We've even got secondary sources if you think that's relevant or current. But really, you should be going in here, reading all of these so that you understand, so you can better advise the wider business. In this case, we don't really have time, so we're just going to say, cool, let's just assume that that's good. Oh, I forgot to click that button, damn it. Anyway, so that's great. We've got this legal research memo. I could just copy and paste that into an email and send it off to my CEO, or I could do a little bit further research as well, and that's what the second question is about. Now, while we're waiting for that to come back with an answer, and yes, this is not a Google search, it won't come back instantly, there's a lot of stuff going on under the hood. In particular, one of the things that we do at Thomson Reuters is that we reshape the way your instructions go to the AI. We've been working with natural language processing for over 30 years now. A lot of people don't know that, but we've been doing that with our Westlaw and practical law platform, so we know how lawyers talk. We know the underlying assumptions that come with your instructions. And so we do a little bit of work to shape it so that you don't need to be a prompt specialist, prompt engineer. You can just talk to it like you would a paralegal, a graduate lawyer, what have you. And so it comes back with these beautiful answers. Now, we're running out of time, right? CEO is very frazzled. So let's just get this into an email. And this is where I can say to co-counsel, fantastic. Draft me, or better yet, actually, I have a data breach response plan. Let's upload that. So I'm going to go here, upload this data breach response plan, 2019. We'll come back to that in a second. And I'm going to put this into co-counsel. I'm just going to say, oh my God, what's going on there? No, that's not what I want. Okay, cool. Summarize this document so I understand next steps after a breach. Cool. So why am I doing this? Why am I doing all of this in one chat? Well, we have this ability in co-counsel for the tool to remember the things that you're doing. And we call this workflow chaining, where you have a number of different tasks. You're doing them sort of like in isolation. They're kind of separate tasks, right? You've got two legal research questions, and then we have a summarization functionality here. And so it's come back with this pretty sort of brief, I would say. Well, let's see, is it finished? Yeah, that's pretty brief. Excellent, that's exactly what I wanted. And now I can say, draft me an email to my CEO explaining what constitutes a data breach from the results above and what my obligations are under the law, let's just say from the results above, and include reference to our data breach response plan. Cool. I don't need to read through all these documents that was crafted in 2019. I forgot what it says in there. I was hoping this would never happen. So I just get co-counsel summarize it for me, do a couple of legal research questions, and within, what's that been, 5 minutes or something? This is about to pop out, hopefully. It'll create a nice little email based on all of the information that it's done in the past, and the next time the CEO calls, you can be like, hey, look, check your email, stop freaking out and just actually look at your email. So here we go. Dear CEO, definition of data breach, obligations under the notifiable data breaches scheme, data breach response plan, and of course we even have these footnotes in here, so I can just double check everything that's come out as well, but better yet, really, you should be double checking. I mean, how long is that going to take you to double check that, right? And now we have this beautiful email ready to go. Boom, send it off to the CEO. We get another call. CEO goes, okay, that's great. Turns out, we have been attacked. We shut down all access to all of our servers. However, we have detected that they were on one particular database for about 20 minutes. We don't know what's happened. We don't know what they've taken. We are continuing to investigate, but I need you to kick into action because we know we have obligations now that we've done this research, and we know there are penalties, of course, to not notifying the proper bodies of authority. So I go, okay, that's a problem. Let's take a look at that database that was attacked. So I go into co-counsel. I'm going to select an entire database. Of course, we've got connections into things. I'm not going to go into it. It's very technical. But user permissions are all secure. This is all on the Thomson Reuters information security architecture, so world-leading security there. I'm going to click on these e-agreements. 2025, this is the database that was attacked, let's say. And I'm going to say, is there any personal information in here? Now, this database that I have only has about 15 contracts or something like that, but you can imagine if there's 15,000 in there, right? You're going to need something that can get through this very, very quickly because part of our obligations is to notify people affected, right? So we need to know who was affected in this particular database, what are their details. And so that's what we're doing here, right? We're just going to do a quick little search within this database to figure out who's been affected, how have they been affected, who do we need to notify, and then we can take a look at our data breach response plan. Now, as you can imagine, when you're doing these search of database kinds of functionalities, the way it works is you upload all the documents into a database, or we connect into one that you already have, and then AI does a whole bunch of what we call indexing, right? And very, very complicated stuff, but it reduces the amount of time that the processing needs to do to just get through all of that information. So I used to work with probably a lot of you are familiar with the Enron database, 500,000 emails, right? And I'd be running these kinds of skills on that all the time. And it usually takes about 5 minutes or so, but think about that, 500,000 emails. I used to ask things like, look for examples of humor or dodgy accounting practices, right? You would never be able to do that. First, a person would take forever. Secondly, if you were doing a control F, you can't control F a dodgy accounting practice, can you? But with AI, you can do that kind of stuff. So I want you to just keep that in mind. We don't need to look for very specific things. Okay, results are back. Problem. There's a lot of personal information in here. So what I'm going to do is I can say, okay, extract all the names from that result into a list. And I'll just go ahead and do that. But We don't have too much time left, so I'm not going to go into every little thing that you can do here. But I think what's really, really important is the fact that our data breach response plan was drafted 6 years ago. That's a problem. There's a lot of things have changed since then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload that data breach response plan, but I'm also going to upload a gold standard template from Practical Law. Now, those of you who are not familiar with Practical Law, that is our vetted and maintained database of legal guidance written by our internal editors. There's over 30 lawyers in-house, and we get external lawyers to write for our team as well. One of the things that's really important about Practical Law is that when you get a template from Practical Law, or you rely on guidance on Practical Law, this is updated and maintained data, so you know that it's current. You don't have to think, is there been a particular case or legislation or interpretation of some legislation that's changed things? We will update that constantly and regularly. So I'm going to say, compare these documents. So I can see what the difference between my very old data breach response plan is compared to the gold standard template, right? And I just want you to notice that's a really bad prompt. I don't know how many people here are using AI, but typically you would have to give it the context. Oh, I'm a lawyer, I've got a data response. You don't need to do that. You don't need to tell it to output into a table or anything like that. We've done the heavy lifting at Thomson Reuters. We've got a huge team of people constantly testing, talking to clients, and learning, and that's what I started this whole thing about. We're listening to you guys, and we are developing these products so that you don't need to just type in a whole bunch of stuff and give it this long prompt. All you have to say is compare these, that's not my computer, but compare these, that's not my computer either. This is really awkward. Well, you're just gonna have to take my word for it.
Can you, yeah.
Hey, there we go, excellent. Okay, cool. So, 45 seconds left. Let's take a look. We've got a whole bunch of stuff that co-counsel has made a determination of whether or not that's relevant or useful. We've got the introduction and purpose, the scope, the definition of a data breach, the data breach response team, a whole bunch of cool stuff. But the last thing I want to say is what I've said a couple times before. Do not just trust the work that comes out of the AI. Check it, verify it. And that's why we have these little footnotes. It's going to open up the document. It's going to take you to the right page of the document. And it's going to highlight directly on the document where it's found its answer, right? We can go down and take a look at this one over here, number 6. It's going to highlight that whole section. I'll go down over here, number 8. There you go. You get the point. So that's co-counsel. I don't think there's probably any time for questions.
Okay. Let's, while we've got Ziggy in the spotlight, any questions about co-counsel, AI, data breaches?
Don't ask me about data breaches.
Yeah. Anything else? I know AI has been a hot topic for the last couple of days, but you've got a specialist right here. Any?
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions? Just so. Okay.
I'll ask a question. Well done, Ziggy.
Thank you.
I know that there are so many great features of the co-counsel. I'm wondering what you're finding your clients telling you are some of the biggest ones, the biggest things that they like.
Well, it really depends on whether you're in-house or you're a law firm. And I want to also just mention that the law firms are really driven by in-house clients. That's a key thing, a key trend they keep telling us. We want to know what the in-house teams are using. So I'll focus on that. I would say the main one would be due diligence. It's going through contracts and pulling out information, large sets of contracts. Maybe you want to retrospectively look at your contracts to see if there are any unfair contract terms. Maybe you have employment agreements that prohibit pay secrecy and you want to actually check to see if there's anything that doesn't comply with the regulations or things like that. It's those kinds of, like, when you work in a complex regulatory environment and things are changing, you need to understand, do I need to uplift my contracts? Am I in compliance? The AI will go through, search it for you. It'll even make suggested amendments on how you can bring it up to scratch so that you don't get fined.
Anything else on co-counsel? Has everybody seen a demo of co-counsel? If you haven't, the Thomson Reuters team is right on the other side of this wall. They've got a desk. Ziggy will be there as well, and you can see it, and then you can ask it some tricky questions and see what answers it comes up with. But thank you so much, Ziggy. Big round of applause, please.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Now, it's always tough. It's always tough to do a session after lunch because there is the post-lunch slump. But we've got 2 more panels. But before we break, before you leave, we've got some prizes to give out. So the Locadia team is here, and Sasha, if I can hand over to you, and you can announce the winners of your lucky draw. We've got Blueies here. Big fan of Bluey. There you go.
Thank you. So I'm going to do the draw. I've got 2 big blueies to give away. And the first winner is Yvonne of NH Foods.
Yvonne, NH Foods.
If she's not here, I'll track her down. Okay. And the other winner is Lisa Nguyen of eBay.
Lisa from eBay.
No, we'll track her down as well. Thank you.
Thank you, So fun fact, that's Sasha over there, and she knits sews the scarves for the Blueies herself with the Locadia logo. So if you haven't seen them yet, I think they're giving a few of the little ones out, so be nice to them and they might give you a Bluey. All right, so Judge Joanna, who's sitting in the front, have you had a chance to look at all the potential winners in the last 30 seconds? Or do we need more time, do you think? It's okay, we can give it more time. All right. So while Joanna is deciding the 2 winners of the Ninja Challenge, and see how I just delegated that responsibility to somebody else. I hate doing things like that because I always get yelled at and say, oh, you were, favoritism and all that kind of stuff. And given that it was an ethics session, I thought I might as well just delegate that responsibility to Joanna. And Joanna did provide the prizes as well. So how do you feel? Do you think we have 2 winners? Yeah. Okay, so come up. You got to hand out the prizes as well. All right, so which ones did you like?
There were posts from Rosie.
Rosie O'Donnelly, are you here? Rosie, there you go. Rosie and Courtney, come up. So Rosie is from MRI Software, Courtney from Nando's, who also supplied the chili yesterday for the Ninja activity, so thank you so much. And the second winners, Rama Lingard, and who else was in the photo? Rama, come up with whoever. Yes, Angela Grant, if you're still in the room. Excellent, Rama, thank you so much. So we've got 2 pairs of sunglasses in each of the 2 bags, and yeah, they have to match. No, all good. It's okay. Thank you so much. I also put in some vouchers into the bags from Marnie at Fun Lab. So remember yesterday I was saying Fun Lab owns a lot of concepts like Holy Moly and Strike Bowling. Put in some vouchers there for you, so do enjoy them with your families. Thank you so much. Thanks, Joanna, as well. Big round of applause, please, for our winners and for everybody who posted on LinkedIn. If you didn't win something, just find me later. I've got some more vouchers I can give you. I want you all to walk away winners. Excellent. All right, we've got our next panel/workshop breakout. In this room, how to manage psychosocial hazards. And then downstairs in the secret room, the challenges of being a parent and a GC. So you have 2 minutes to decide you want to stay or you want to go down to the secret room. Thank you so much. All right, so in this room, we've got how to manage psychosocial hazards. And then downstairs, there's a workshop on the challenges of being a parent and a GC. Head down if you want to. They're about to start in a minute. This door? This door? All right, team. Before we start our next panel, we've got a video from our silver sponsor, Lockadia, which we'll play for you right now.
Lawcadia is an end-to-end legal operations platform purpose-built for in-house legal teams. A unique two-sided platform powered by intelligent automation, Lawcadia transforms how legal teams manage intake, workflows, and external legal engagements. With structured intake and triage, teams can allocate work efficiently, reduce risk, and ensure the right work is done by the right people. Automated workflows and integrated matter management deliver control, visibility, and consistency. Advanced search makes it easy to find what you need fast, across matters, documents, emails, and more. Configurable metrics and dashboards highlight legal's value and support strategic reporting. An innovative award-winning platform with enterprise-grade security and data governance, Lawcadia is your strategic partner, empowering, supporting, and amplifying your legal team.
Excellent. Please meet the Lockadia team. They're right out there, and they've got those blueies, remember? So, unless they've run out by now. But thank you so much, Lockadia. All right, panel session to kick off, and then we've got another panel after this, and then you've got drinks. So, something to look forward to, which is always good. If you attended the after party yesterday, you would know there's a lot of alcohol on offer. Thank you so much. How to manage psychosocial hazards. Our moderator is James True, practice group leader of employment at Legal Vision. Our panelists are Georgina Koch, general counsel, company secretary, and executive for people and culture at Plenty. Ninja Black, Nina Stammel, general counsel and company secretary at My Health. And then Lydia Jukic, principal, White Edges Advisory, and acting head of legal at Willis Pacific. Big round of applause, please, for our speakers. Keep that applause going. Let's go. Excellent. All right. So you know the drill. 40 minutes, 20 minutes. We'll stop for questions. James, over to you.
Thanks so much, everyone. So yes, I'm James True. I head up the employment team at Legal Vision. I'm joined here by Nina and Lydia and Georgina on the end there. When we talk about psychosocial hazards, I'm going to try and do not very much talking so we can listen to some really great legal minds here. But I'll set the scene in terms of just talking about what does the law say about psychosocial hazards and actually what are psychosocial hazards. At its highest level, every business has an obligation to ensure so far as is reasonably practicable, that's the language, the health and safety of all your workers. That means dealing with psychosocial hazards. And what are they? Well, they're basically non-physical risk in a business. So it's going to include things like poor job design, poor change management, low control in relation to your job. It can be things like remote work, and then it can be the more obvious non-physical risks like bullying, harassment, discrimination, those types of things. I want to kick off with you, Lydia. Why is it important, and why does psychosocial hazards matter in a business?
Yeah, so coming from that insurer background, I thought I'd put my hand up to size up the scope of the issue, and I think it was quite fortuitous when Rowan asked me to speak about this topic, which is very topical at the moment, that I was working at Allianz at the time, and I stumbled upon a survey and a report that is now available that they did with Superfriend on indicators of a thriving workplace. And what they found as part of that report is that organisations are dealing with lots of complexity in dealing with the diverse needs of today's workplace. As part of that survey, they took a look at the top 3 causes for negative workplace experiences affecting mental health, and what they found from those interviewed, and by the way, there were 75,000 workers across in all industries and different types of organisations, and they harvested about a decade of data to provide some really useful insights, trends and challenges. To come up with the top 3 of firstly being cost of living pressures at the moment. Lots of people being stuck in jobs because of cost of living, financial pressures that they're dealing with, followed by lack of reward and recognition in their roles, and then closely followed by lack of resourcing or support. So doing them all with less, which I'm sure everyone in this room has had some encounter with. The claims data from Allianz married up with those, those figures that were coming out from the survey data, and that they found that their claims for psychological workers' comp claims had gone up by 47%. The majority of that was in bullying and harassment, followed by stress and burnout. They also found that the cost of their claims were going up by 30%, and then also the complexity and the time taken off as well was going up about 30% as well. So the extent of the issue is quite substantial, and it marries up to the national figures. So we have a lot of lagging indicators that are coming out with the workers' comp claims, but basically psych claims have gone by 37% across the board, and they now constitute 9% of total workers' comp claims nationally. This comes at a cost at $39.9 billion to the economy, and it's resulted in a lot of increased staff turnover, absenteeism, etc. So I don't like to, I usually say there's a beauty in numbers, but there's an ugliness here in the numbers that everyone, should take pause and think about, because psych claims, they need to be treated with the same level of importance, because there is a trend that's just trending upwards here. And I'll just finish off by saying the 2 trends that came out of that report was that really there's a growing empathy and compassion gap between managers and employees in terms of, what managers think they're doing well in terms of setting up for a diverse and inclusive workplace versus what employees think, both in terms of the reality of what's happening now and then in the future. And the second trend that's come out of that report is, the influence that unconscious bias still plays, in managerial thinking, with half of managers admitting that they still, factor in unconscious bias. It's this, inadvertent way of thinking based on lived experience in the way that you select people for tasks in jobs. And that report really found that people with disabilities, neurodivergent employees, as well as younger cohorts of teams were most impacted. So, yeah, that's a bit of...
And were you saying too previously, one of the differences with a psychosocial claim, say in relation to a physical claim, when someone's having time off, is the return to work, timing, and then rates in total? Can you talk to us about that?
Absolutely. So the national total at the moment, it's 34.2 weeks versus 8 weeks for physical workers' comp claims. So that's the average. There's obviously outliers. The cost of dealing with the workers' comp claims is also increasing. So I don't know what the average costs are, but I highly recommend getting the report. I think there is a stigma. I think everyone knows there's a stigma associated with psychological claims compared to physical claims. They're treated differently by employers. With the physical claim, it's factual. Something physical has happened. There are witnesses, etc. Whereas the data is finding that most employers are denying these claims. So I think that merits understanding a little bit about what is going on in the workplace, what is actually happening in your organisation, and how can you build better framework systems and processes to support those people so that they have better return to work outcomes, because I think the chances of these workers coming back is slim.
That's right, and then you've got the cost of your premiums going up, as well as then the lost time cost and the organisational disruption cost. Nina and Georgina, you're sort of at the forefront in your organisations of leading the processes, but we can talk about what a psychosocial hazard is. How are you finding them in the business? Actually going out and risk assessing. I'll start with you, Georgina.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, James. And I think Lydia's set the scene really well in terms of contextualising the extent of the problem. It's really important that you tackle it up front, because you don't want to have a 32 weeks? 34 return to work time frame for someone who does suffer from a psychosocial hazard. So it's really important to work out how you operationalise these. I'll talk a little bit through what we do at Plenty, and Nina's got a different experience to me. So the starting point, obviously, for any organisation is policies and processes. So we cover these off in a number of different policies. So we've got our workplace behaviour policy, our Respect at Work policy, WH&S, and our Code of Conduct. And obviously every lawyer knows that part of having a policy is you've then got to provide training on it. At Plenty, what we do is, instead of doing a online training module, and obviously they're amazing and they have a place and we use a lot of them, this is one of the few trainings that we insist on doing in person, and it's the only training that I personally conduct. So I do the training in all of our offices, and I physically attend our interstate offices to conduct the training. And I do that for a couple of reasons. I think that, touching on the point that James made about directors and officers of the company having this obligation to take reasonable steps, it's really important for employees to know that senior leaders take this stuff really seriously. And the best way that I can express that to our teams is for me to physically go and do the training. The other thing that I do is, as we all know, training can be very dry and boring, and often you try and make it fun and engaging and interesting. I don't with this type of training. And I'm very clear about that at the outset. So when I conduct the training, I tell our employees that this isn't going to be a funny, fun training session, because the subject matter is serious. And I want our employees to know that I take it seriously, our executive team takes it seriously, and so does our board. And so that's sort of the first step that we go in, really setting the scene and setting the tone from the top, that the company takes it seriously. Nina, I know you've got some different experiences to share.
Yes, so, for those who don't know much about My Health, we're in healthcare, so we assist in managing primary care clinics in New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland, so we're very decentralised. We've got people who are clinic staff on the ground, a mixture of employees, contractors and then independent providers. We've got doctors who head up from a managerial sense at the clinics. And then we've got our sort of back-end headquarters or support centre. So it's a very broad and decentralised organisation, which sort of adds a layer of complexity. I think creating policies and procedures is the easy part. I mean, we've all, most of us are using AI now, and those sorts of things you can do very quickly. But to actually make it meaningful to your context, and then also to keep it alive and actually working in the business. That's where I like to keep my team the most focused. I work closely with our HR team. We're a small organisation. We're about 800 to 1,000 employees. So it is easier in a way that we are small. But a big focus for my team is on education. So we make sure that we get out to each of the states every quarter and we actually engage with people. So whatever training we might be delivering on, and I see it as a really good window for us to not only provide training to the business, but to actually learn from people and to hear what's going on. And you just don't get that sort of feedback and engagement when you're providing trainings on Zoom or on email, obviously. So a big focus for us is, not just obviously on all things AI, which I know we're very focused on at the moment, but human skills, which I think plays a big part in this space. So it's, get off emails, call people. I know it's quicker. Come into the office. I know, I've been in a lot of conversations recently, and I contribute, in the same way that going into the office can be unproductive in many ways. You have the water cooler chats, and you have to connect with people. God, but that's actually, the fun part, and I think it's that connection piece and the human piece that actually plays into a lot of the preventative steps that we have to be thinking about in this space now. So that's a big part of what we focus on.
Yeah, and you talk about the coming back into the office because remote or isolated work is one of the listed psychosocial hazards. Lydia, you were talking about a report that talked about younger employees actually wanting to come back to the office, and there's a bit of a tension, for a lot of businesses. On the one hand, we want to give you flexibility because that can be great for your personal health, for your mental health. But then what's being lost, and that are we now seeing employees start to realise what maybe is being lost? Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my business partner, her husband Davenport, has a company called Davenport Campbell, an architecture company, and they did a recent study with the Young Architectures Department at University of New South Wales, and they found that with younger cohorts, they actually view a physical workplace as a rite of passage, and to be deprived of that, is moving away from their sense of meaning and purpose. So they really are actually embracing the opportunity to go back into the workplace so that they can learn through osmosis, through the mentoring, to have a place where, it's an anchoring place as well as, a social hub. A lot of these young people, they don't have the right setup at home to do their roles effectively, and they want to have the choice here. So we have to be mindful that when we're building for belonging, as what I like to call it, with these inclusive and workplaces, we have to cater for the diverse needs of everyone out there, not just remote workers. That being said, I think there's a particular risk with younger workers and remote workers, who don't want to come into the office. It's harder to gauge early signs of foreseeable harm because that's really the obligation that the employers have, right? You need to take a whole of risk assessment view of all of this if you want to take it seriously. So everything from identifying, mapping out all your risks, assessing them, controlling them, training on them, and then continually reviewing them. And sometimes people get missed in this equation.
Yeah, I mean, we would commonly advising clients on their safety obligations, and what we're often saying is treat your psychosocial risks just as you would treat any other physical risk in the organisation. So if someone tells you that there's water on the floor in the kitchen, is your response going to be, cool, thanks, and you get back to it? Or are you going to go and look and see if it is there? And if it is there, are you going to mop it up? And are you also then going to go and check, maybe is this going to be an ongoing problem because I've dealt with the initial problem, but there's a leak somewhere, I need to fix it. Take the exact same approach when it comes to a psychosocial hazard. So Nina, you were talking about like a one-on-one catch-up process you have, and I see one-on-ones or any kind of, employee engagement as a risk assessment. That is your ability to go and walk around your business and say, is there water on the floor in the kitchen? You have to do this when it comes to psychosocial hazards. They're a little bit trickier. Can you talk us through how you actually facilitate that risk assessment in that kind of very subtle way through your one-on-ones?
Yeah, again, it's easier for me because my team's quite small, so I appreciate it. It might be harder for some with bigger teams, but we build in, as well as like systems doing pulse checks in terms of, you know, 1 monthly check-in or how you going in terms of well-being. Again, I introduced it into that human aspect. So when we're actually speaking to one another, either one-on-one and in our team meetings, actually, we have kind of a rating system that we've spoken about and everyone's comfortable with. It's basically, you know, just saying, how are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And you don't have to go into any details. You can just say, I'm a 3 this week. And then, you know, we know. And I model that myself. I'm very open. I have no shame in saying, you know, I'm having a shitty week. I'm a 3. And it might be personal reasons. It might be work reasons. It doesn't matter. You're still doing your job and you're still performing and you're still there. But what it does is it kind of makes it a non-issue and it kind of opens up the floor for people to feel very comfortable because they see you doing it. In sharing that. And then, you know, we've got strategies as a team as to how we'll come together and support each other. So if there's a big transaction going on and you're a 3 this week, that's really good to know because we can kind of accommodate that and work with that. So that's how we manage it for ourselves.
And Georgina...
Yeah, we have a similar process. So Plenty is a non-bank lender and we're a technology-based company. And so we have a similar process where, you know, regular one-on-ones and we actually use a tech platform to do that. And one of the sliders on the platform is about your individual well-being. And so it's a really easy way for people to raise things when they might not necessarily feel comfortable in a team setting or in a one-on-one to actually say, I've got a problem here. It's quite easy to click a slider and you can manage and monitor that as a manager. I think it's really important to be reactive when you become aware of something, but I think that the obligation is to go further than that and you need to be proactive. And so one of the things that we look at is we look at job design. And so we look in our organisation and we say, okay, well, where are the jobs where psychosocial hazards are carrying a higher risk than in other jobs? So with lots of companies, frontline staff, for us, it is our customer service team and in particular our dispute resolution team. So those teams, they really are at the coalface. They're dealing with customers who can be extremely difficult. They're dealing with customers who might be themselves suffering from a psychosocial hazard. You know, they can be dealing with issues that really can be very confronting. And so we need to recognise that those jobs carry additional risks from a psychosocial hazard perspective. What we do at Plenty is we've recognised that in those teams and we provide them with additional days of annual leave over and above what everybody else in the company gets. The purpose of that is to recognise that they need some time off to debrief from what is essentially a very stressful job. And so we want to make sure that we're providing those, I guess, you know, control mechanisms to really proactively prevent some of those hazards from coming to the front. We look at that from a structural job design perspective. I think it's really important to also look at it from a periodical or cyclical perspective as well. So just recently in the legal team, we had some corporate activity and the lawyers were working crazy hours. So, you know, 80-hour weeks for, you know, an extended period of time. And so what I did at the end of that period of time was say, okay, well, this is a recognition that you've all worked extremely hard. This isn't normal. And yes, lawyers are A-type personalities and want to do a good job and will put in the extra effort when required. But then senior management needs to step in and say, okay, well, we recognise that you've done that and we now need to give you some additional time off so you have an opportunity to rest and recharge. So I think it's really important to look at job design and, as Lydia said about the risk assessment process, think about where in your organisation you've got these heightened risks and what can you build into the job design process to try and manage for those.
I want to kick on to performance management, but Rowan, are we going to...
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've just hit the 20-minute mark. Any questions? Questions? One? Okay, great.
Thank you. This is an amazing panel. Practically, a lot of the measures come at a cost, like financially paid leave, support, extra supervision. What does that conversation look like? Because I can see why and absolutely the trends, but what does the conversation around cost to the business, like how does that go down?
I mean, I'll start and then pass over to the rest of the panel. So from a cost perspective, I think it's important when you're going to your CFO or your CFO and you're trying to, as CEO, and trying to make a case for why you need something that costs money, you can use some of the stats and data to say, if we don't proactively step into this and manage this risk, in the long run, it's going to cost us a lot more. So what we did find, and the additional annual leave in our dispute resolution team was something we put in place when we saw as a pattern heightened sick leave from that team. And so, you know, the sick leave costs you money. Instead of waiting for that to cost you money and to have teams that are stressed and out for a period of time, proactively lean into that and say, okay, well, this is something that we can put in place. As soon as we introduced the additional leave, sick leave went right back to normal. And so I think try and frame the conversation of this is what's going to cost you if we don't manage it.
Back to that cost question. Do you then see this an increased rates of the public needing accelerating technology, because technology doesn't get stressed, it doesn't need to leave, it doesn't need, so rather than employing someone, is it now more attractive to get a piece of technology to replace someone else? And what it was, like you have the stats of massive increases in this. You know, do you think that's going to accelerate the uptake of technology to avoid actually engaging with people?
Yeah, so interesting. Technology isn't the issue, it's how we use technology, and the same skills that lead a human workplace lead a AI-generated workplace. They're talking about CEOs now being the last generation that will oversee human workplaces, right? And the point of AI is to improve in productivity, efficiency, but also to move the dial with your professional organisation so that they're doing more engaged work. Sure, there's going to be a lot of job displacements, particularly entry-level jobs and anything that is automated. But if you read and listen to what's out there, they're also looking to replace jobs at the upper end of the spectrums, the surgeons, the lawyers. Yes, I mean there is a risk there, right? The challenge for leadership as well as lawyers is to understand how do we reinvent these roles so that we still have engaged and thriving workplaces. This is, they're talking about this as being the next industrial revolution, but unlike the industrial revolution, you're replacing manual labour with intellectual. And if you look at AI at the moment, it has zero intelligence. It is generated based on the data that you put into it. I think the risk with AI at the moment is the way that it will feed into each other and automate decision making. And in the insurance area, that is rife with possibility and risk, right? And that's where your role as a lawyer needs to really elevate up so you can manage the expectations of a business in terms of what their ethical obligations are, right? Because between employer and employee, it's not just the legal, but it's also a moral and social, contract that you have with these workers, and you need to do the right thing by them in managing their understanding and how they cope with AI transformation.
And there's also a bit of an irony potentially there where, and something maybe for you to comment on Nina, in terms of the more AI that's driven and then used, the loss of the potential personal skills which are necessary to manage some of the psychosocial hazards.
Yeah, sure. I think a lot about AI and human skills together. And I'm seeing generally, anecdotally, plus I see it within our organisation, people don't like having direct conversations. And I actually was going to I think it was your question before, sometimes in terms of demonstrating, why you want to invest in this space, it takes an incident to occur to actually show, look at how, never waste a crisis, Look at how much time this took us. And it might be something that was a small dispute and it resolved, but it still took a lot of people's time, or it might have been something that, ended up going to Fair Work or beyond, and cost money and time. But my point is that I think in most of the incidents that I've seen that have taken time and money, it has come back to people not wanting to talk to each other and not wanting to have difficult conversations. And I've heard anecdotally that, the more that we're using AI, and particularly the younger generations as well, you're becoming more reliant on that technology. There's more working from home. There's more chatting on text and email or Zoom calls, and not that in-person human connection. The more that people are resistant to actually jumping in and addressing difficult situations early. That's kind of where I see that human aspect coming back in. It's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, being able to model that even when you don't want to have the conversations, you have to do it and model it, and helping people in the business to learn how to do that. Because when I'm thinking about things like where is AI going to replace me or us, because it will in certain elements, it already is, I think about, well, where is our value right now as a team? Like what, at least for now, can we not be replaced in? And, you know, I know people are already speaking to AI as their therapist, and, you know, maybe down the line they will have emotions and be able to manage these situations. But right now, I think we can really help to jump in and teach people how you can stop things from escalating, costing time and money by addressing something early on.
And
sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think Nina's point there is great in terms of having those difficult conversations up front, because one of the other levers that is available to you to manage these hazards is your performance management process. So you've got to have a really robust performance management process in place. It's got to be fair, it's got to be transparent, but it has to be used. And so it's one of the things that we've been chatting about is when you don't have an effective performance management process or your staff aren't following it, that's when issues can arise and you can find yourself for the Fair Work Commission.
Yeah, we were saying, I think the comment earlier was, in so many, I think maybe it was you, Nina, in the Fair Work claims that you'd come across and been involved in throughout your time, a lot of it boiled down to people not actually having had conversations with each other and communicating.
The vast majority. Yeah, and sometimes in our business, especially, you know, doctors sometimes don't like to have those difficult conversations with staff either. It's getting people comfortable with sitting someone down face to face and having a hard conversation. And I think we're very used to emailing each other in a passive aggressive way sometimes, and people are too scared to actually sit down and say, you know, hey, I've noticed something is not right. I'm curious. Help me to understand why X, Y, Z. Like, it's something very simple, but people don't like talking to each other in some instances, and they let things slide. And then I think that both heightens your risks as a business in terms of getting claims down the track, and it heightens a risk of harm to employees as well, because if you don't address issues early on, people in those circumstances often think that it's being kind to that employee, where it's actually, you know, it's actually cruel, because you're not actually being direct in a respectful way and telling them what the issue is and giving them the opportunity to address it. And then down the line, you might, you know, they'll be caught by surprise. They've had no idea for months that something's going on. Then you try and performance manage it then. Bad for them, bad for you.
And I think that failure to effectively performance manage at the right time has flow-on impacts to the rest of the team. So chances are, if one person can see this bad behaviour that's going on, a lot of other people are seeing it too. And, you know, we all know that phrase of, you know, culture is set by the worst behaviour you're willing to walk past. If there's a performance issue and management isn't actively managing it, what will happen is the flow-on impacts to the rest of the team, and they're saying, oh, well, look at, you know, so-and-so over here who's being allowed to get away with this. And you'll end up having attrition from the good members of your team. So I think that don't underestimate the impact of having an effective performance management process, but then making sure that it's followed.
Have we got other questions?
Any questions? No? Everybody's? Okay.
One over here.
Thanks very much, Ryan. That was very informative. Thank you all. I certainly will be taking away a lot of ideas to have that conversation with executive and C-suite about how do we sort of reshape the perspective on where the risk is and why or what are the benefits of managing it effectively. I just sort of had, I guess, a thought about AI, because I know that obviously that's been a huge component of the conference overall. Even if, you know, AI is brought in and it's designed and tailored, thinking about agentic AI mostly, because that is going to be, I guess, the tool that is most applicable to replace headcount with machines. You're still going to need a person to do it. You're still going to need people to roll it out. So even as executives are looking and being a bit hungry about, you know, within their sales teams or within their customer service teams, I can drop headcount by 25 or 30% because I can, you know, take out a tier or a proportion of lower level matters with agents. There's still going to be, you're going to need your people to tailor that tool. You're going to need people to roll it out. You're then going to need people to manage the tool and also to manage how the business makes use of that tool at the more senior levels. So I think people expecting headcount to drop really rapidly and finally, like that's the end point, everyone except the CEO is a bot. That's not at all how the picture's going to actually be. What is going to happen is that we're all going to move into different day-to-day tasks working with AI.
Unless you listen to some doomsday people. I was listening to a podcast recently where they had a different view that eventually the AI will be able to talk to each other. I think train itself and change their code and take over the world. But I think that's a fair way down the track. But yeah, it's certainly not on the radar in our group in terms of, we can replace a whole bunch of people by AI.
I think, to the point that I made earlier, I agree with that view in the main. It's not going to replace entirely because you still need to control technology. So how you use the technology and it's how you then redeploy your staff to make better use of them. And that's a journey, right, that you take the business on with a business transformation, etc. So I can't remember where I was going with all of this. Yeah, I think, I don't know where I was going with this.
Well, I was going to add that my personal dream is to be in a Matrix-style egg, having my energy harvested to feed a computer that's doing my job. So, but I do think we are a fair way away from that. And even once we're there, there's still a human, and there's still a human who's covered by the Work Health Safety Act. And so there's still going to be obligations for companies. And one of the listed psychosocial hazards that are all expressly dealt with in codes of practice and in the regulations includes poor job control. So, I mean, even the fear of losing your job to AI becomes a psychosocial hazard that a company needs to deal with. As well as another listed hazard there is poor organisational change management. So even if organisations are going to do that type of thing, managing it poorly creates liability.
Correct. I think where I was going before, is that certain industries will probably be affected earlier on and more. So for instance, in insurance, you're already looking at lots of insurers looking at automated claims decision-making platforms. Within law departments, we've already started using offshore centres of excellence. We're now replacing the human capability with the AI automated capability, and it's phenomenal, right? AI I don't think is going to replace people, it's going to replace people who don't know how to use AI, right? And that's a real opportunity for everyone to upskill and engage, and I think we should start focusing on the positive messages of all of this rather than the doomsday, and there's a lot of doomsday stuff out there. But I think that, if we take everyone on a journey here and, we take a look at the data and, take on board the feedback and build that into our risk models, then I think that, you'll be much better set up for success.
And I think too, it's important to not underestimate that continued need for human involvement and human interaction. And to the point I made earlier around the fact that I do this particular training myself, following those training sessions, inevitably someone will reach out to me and raise an issue. And that's exactly what I want. And that's why I do the training. So I want people to know that, this is an executive, we take it seriously, I'm doing the training, reach out to me. Everyone has my details, and query whether if we were doing the training and we were running it just through either technology or AI, would that happen? Would somebody still then, if my picture was attached to the end, are they going to still reach out to me? Or is it a case of actually, Georgina came and spoke to us and she seemed sincere and genuine and she said to reach out. And my experience has been that it is effective. And so, I think there's a little way to go before none of us have any jobs.
I think, James, back to you.
Well, I was going to ask, do we have other questions out there?
Yep.
Down the front.
Questions.
I think one of the common issues that a lot of in-house teams suffer from is that you're doing more with less, everyone's extremely stretched, you're dealing with sometimes subject matter that's very serious or has big consequences. How do you think that like leaders in legal teams can help their teams deal with those sorts of psychosocial hazards?
Within the team, I'm assuming me, yeah. I mean, I try to remind people to be cognizant of priorities, and so know to keep focused on their own time, because otherwise, if you don't have your priorities in mind, you get railroaded by everybody else's. So that's one way. It's always coming back to what's our business strategy and our strategy off the back of that. What are our key things to focus on? Everything else, right now, depending on what's going on, it's either we don't do it, if it doesn't have to be done right now, it's someone else's urgent, but it's not our urgent, and it's not the business's urgent, or we outsource it. So it's kind of always coming back to priorities and taking ownership of your time. And then another way that we do that is prioritising well-being. So for me, like I've got a background in yoga teaching and all sorts of other weird things outside of the law. So I well-being is like number one for me for everything, and I highlight that for our team as well, and I model that. So I'm lucky in that, you know, my work and the work of my team is largely very flexible. Like we can work from home, we do work from home at least twice a week. And I'm very honest. I've got 2 young kids. I'm very honest about the fact that, you know what, I'm going to start later today because I'm going to go and do it, like get a massage or just go for a swim. And I'm going to work later, or I'm going to, you know, play around with time. And I absolutely encourage my team to do the same. We're very open and transparent about it. I have no issue with you playing around with your time. We need to get the work done. And obviously if there's a meeting, we need to be at important, you know, meetings and things that we're required to be there for. But other than that, well-being is number one. And we have to prioritise that. Yeah.
Look, I would agree with everything that you've just said. I think in addition to all of that, I think there is an obligation on managers to also manage up in terms of understanding what the priorities of the business are and making sure that the team is adequately resourced. So if there's a continual pattern of working long hours, not being supported, you know, you can't flex up and down to cater for the various needs of the business. I think that you've got a trend and you've got a pattern there that needs to probably be escalated. And, you know, if the manager isn't working or isn't being supported by the executive team or the reporting team, wherever the budget's coming from, well, then that should be escalated as an issue.
All right, we've got basically a minute left. Maybe James, if you could close us out with your final thoughts on how to manage these hazards.
Yeah, the key takeaways, and we discussed this as a group earlier, is number one, as with any risk, you have to identify risk in your business. So your business must have a risk identification approach, which includes psychosocial hazards. The second thing is you have to care about it. In some way, you have to, as an organisation, decide that these things matter. And there's been a lot of traction over, I'd say probably the last 15 years, realistically, of these things were, you know, we used to hear about them. Bullying was not really a thing until about 2012 when we got a report on it. It just wasn't dealt with legally. Now it's a real thing. There are jurisdictions for it. So psychosocial hazards are going the same way. So you need an organisation to care about it. And my thoughts are that most organisations are full of very, very clever people who can solve problems. They just need to care about those problems. So once you care about it, once it matters to your organisation, you'll find a way to control those risks. But being at the forefront, taking genuine action largely through your one-on-one catch-ups is where this type of stuff has to happen, is how you're going to identify those risks, and caring about it is how you're going to find your control measures, because they'll be different for every organisation.
Excellent. Big round of applause, please, for our speakers. James, Lydia, Georgina, Nina, thank you so much. If you have any other questions about psychosocial hazards, the Legal Vision team is here, James is here, our panelists are here, so do find them. All right, so before we move on to the next session, just so you know, it is the last session of the summit. Thank you for making it to the end. I'm tired, I'm sure you're all tired and you're looking forward to a beer. I am as well. So the panel in this room is how to understand the Privacy Act reforms. And the secret room downstairs has a workshop on how to level up from legal counsel to general counsel, or essentially just how to level up. So if you want to level up your career, head down. And if you want to stay here and learn more about the Privacy Act reforms, we'll kick off in a few minutes. Thanks so much. Hi Ninjas, so just so you know, if you're in this room, it's how to understand the Privacy Act reforms. And if you're downstairs, you're hearing about how to level up. I just heard that the workshop downstairs was really impactful and authentic. Who attended the workshop downstairs just now? Yeah, would you agree? Was it a good workshop? Excellent, all right. Unfortunately, it's not recorded, so I can't see it, but yeah, I heard there were some good stories. Fantastic. Let's play the video. Excellent. Thank you to the Maddox team for supporting us yet again at the NextGen GC Summit. And we are ready to kick off. Our moderator today is Sonia Sharma, partner at Maddox. Our panelists are Katrina McGregor, Chief Legal and Transformation Officer at Company Secretary at Domain. Harry Mack, Lead Legal Counsel for Asia Pacific and Japan at Databricks. Susan Davis, GC and Company Secretary for APAC at Zurich Covermore Group. And then Veronique Diallo, Chief Legal Officer and Company Secretary at Flybuys. Big round of applause, please. Final panel of the last 3 days of the Australian Law Summit and the NextGen GC Summit. Sonia is going to take it home. The panelists are going to take it home for us. But before we begin, just want to let you know, 40 minutes, 20 minutes, we'll press pause and ask for questions. And then we'll end, and then we'll drink and have a good time, and I can finally relax and not worry about the next panel session until next year. Just before we begin, I just want to let you know a massive thank you to obviously all of our team and all of our ninjas and all of you who have attended today, who have supported us for the last 2 days of the GC Summit, and then the day before that, the Australian Law Summit. We are obviously going to keep doing this every year, and we might make it bigger and better. If you have any feedback on what we can do better or what we should include as topics next year, do let us know. Do send me an email. Do send me a LinkedIn message. That would be awesome. And Sonia, over to you.
So I heard lunch ran out, and clearly it's because we have this star-studded panel here. But I'm a good day lawyer and a bad day lawyer, so I know a few of you have me on speed dial. Now, Ziggy said, close your eyes, and then he laughed, for those of you who were in this room earlier. But I actually am going to make you close your eyes because I do this with my clients, and these visualizations are very effective for thinking about privacy issues, and I encourage you to do this with your teams too. So I do want you to close your eyes and visualize. It is Friday, it's 4 o'clock, you're racing to get out of the office, and then you get that phone call, and it is the ABC, and they have asked you, why is your data on the dark web? This is the first that you have heard of it. Meanwhile, Channel 7 and Channel 9 have published stories about it. They didn't bother to give you a call. The OIIC then sends you an email asking, do you know about this? Have you notified individuals? You're thinking back to an AI process improvement that was implemented in a rush. You didn't conduct a PIA. You had a bad feeling about the third-party provider, but your business was really pushing for it to go ahead. This is based on sort of real life events, right? I'm not making this stuff up. It's like bad day lawyer stuff. It happens all the time. We have had so many changes the last year or so. So we've had tranche 1 of the privacy reforms come into play. And they're a little disappointing. They're not as far as we want them to be, but we've had increased powers and penalties under the Act. We've had the statutory tort introduced. We've had changes to APP 11, and we've had changes around automatic processing. In addition to that, there's been a whole bunch of adjacent laws that have come into place. The Cyber Security Act, AI governance. We've got the ACMA going on a rampage. We've got ASIC and OAIC looking at boards. Who's feeling overwhelmed? Hands up, who is feeling overwhelmed? Well, the good news is I've got an amazing panel, and we decided that our goal was for you to walk out of this room to feel less overwhelmed and to feel a bit more empowered. And so without further ado, we're going to start, and I'll let the panel sort of introduce themselves through the questions. But Catriona, I've had the great pleasure of working with you and really admire the way you sort of lead your teams. But I was wondering if you might tell us a little bit more about your role at Domain, because it's quite an interesting one. And how have you gone about the challenges of unpacking the privacy reforms and dealing with the chaos of the last 12 months or so?
Yep, I'll jump into that. Firstly, can I check, has everyone got their eyes open? You can open your eyes now. So when you go to school, the teachers are really good at this, like close your eyes, and then they remember to say open your eyes. So everyone open their eyes, and you can look at me. So Catriona, as Sonia said, I'm the Chief Legal and Transformation Officer at Domain, which I will unpack a little bit. So legal, like most people in the room, GC or in legal roles. But I also have transformation in my remit, which was a new role that I took on probably coming up to 3 years now, which is really about project governance of our most strategic projects in the business. And these were projects that we looked at which were very, very important, critical that we implemented them, but were probably the ones that no one really wanted to implement. But if we didn't, they were going to make a massive strategic difference to our business. So privacy is on that list. So we've got a big privacy project, which I'll talk about. Cyber is another. We have a booking and billing project. If anyone's done, how you book revenue and bill it, it's not very exciting. But if we don't have a new booking and billing system, we're not going to be doing very efficient billing, and we won't get the revenue in. So those types of projects that, when they're not on the front line of revenue, like people often put them to the bottom of the list. And so we implemented this new way of looking at these projects, and we call them our big rocks. I'm sure you've all got different names within your organisations for these sort of big strategic projects, and privacy and cyber were one of them. And I got the joy of taking on this new project, project governance and advisory, or project team, should I say. And we look at supporting those projects to make sure that they are scoped, budgeted, and that we're delivering them, we're tracking them, we're reporting on them so that we can actually deliver them on time and on budget. So it's completely non-legal role. And in the privacy big rock, I have this very multiple hat. It's like a whole hat shop that I'm wearing, because I have my legal role where I have legal team members who are supporting on the implementation of the legal changes. I'm the privacy officer of the company, so I feel very responsible as part of that legal role. I have one project manager who's working on that, so I'm sort of her manager in the context of she's working on this project. And I'm also the executive leadership team sponsor for this project. So every big rock has got a sponsor, and I'm the sponsor. So I have all these different hats that I have to wear, and clearly I want to make sure the project's successful, because I don't want any one of those hats to fall off. And in terms of how we've gone about it, like most of you, I'm sure, we've looked at what reforms were coming. We also looked at the existing privacy legislation, I guess as a absolute minimum bar, looking to see like how compliant are we with the current legislation. You hope that everyone's saying we're absolutely compliant, but there's always those areas that you're like, oh, we might have another, turn that rock and have another look at it and make sure. So we looked at current level of compliance and where we could do better. And then we looked at what's coming down the track, and we sort of mapped it out into milestones, what we needed to do. And one of the key things that we did was look at who our stakeholders are, like who do we actually need buy-in from to make the projects successful.
And I really liked the big rock idea. I think that's one of the most effective things that you can do, is label it within the organisation as a key project. And the mapping is really key as well in terms of understanding your compliance. And we'll come back to some of those things. Veronique, I might fly over to you on the other side. Now, Flybuys has over 9.6 million customers, which is just,
Correct.
you know, full on when I think about the risk that you're dealing with day in and day out. But one of the most interesting reforms, I think, is, you know, 11.3 of the Privacy Act requires you now to take those technical and organisational measures being people-centric. But what does that actually mean? Like, give us some ideas of what are organisational measures? What are those people-centric measures that you've implemented that actually work?
Sure. So for those who don't know me, Véronique Diallo, I'm the CLO and COSEC at Flybuys. I'm also a member of the executive team. When I joined my first few weeks, I think, I was told about a few privacy breaches in the organization. And there was no privacy officer. So it was a bit of a, hello, nice welcoming to this organization.
Welcome aboard.
And so I had to try to understand what were the measures and what were the processes, and also try to see how we could improve that. So what we've done since I joined, I've hired a privacy and compliance manager who's specialized on the topic, because we have so much data in our organization that it's not something we can take lightly. And what we've been looking at doing is really educating our staff. We are trying to look at the human error opportunities and really training people within the organization to understand what does the Privacy Act says, what does the reform mean, and what does it mean from at our level, from an organizational level. And so we like, this week was Privacy Awareness Week.
Yes.
We took it back to basics, because to get people on board in the journey of what the reform means for them and what does that mean from an organization perspective, is they need to understand what is, you know, personal information. And often we realize there is such misconception about the basics.
But people don't know, right?
No,
People
they
don't realise
they don't realize.
It's feedback, it's
exactly.
geolocation data, it's online behavioural information. People do not know the basics. So the theme for Privacy Awareness Week, which is this week, is privacy. It's everyone's responsibility, or it's everyone's business, make it yours. It's a fantastic theme, because from the boardroom to the break room, right, you need everyone to be on board with it, because behind every issue that goes wrong, there's often human error. And I would love to hear from the panel. Did you anyone else celebrate Privacy Awareness Week? What did you do? Did you do anything fun and exciting?
No, you don't wanna.
We launched a new data retention policy. How exciting is that?
Can I tell you, if you take one thing home from this session, is celebrate Privacy Awareness Week, because when things go wrong and I'm taking you to the regulator, I can say, and we also celebrated Privacy Awareness Week. We trained our people. We had our senior leadership we talked about it. You need to be thinking about these things, and they're easy little touch points that you can do, and you have to make it you have to make your privacy training role specific, and the off the shelf stuff, it doesn't work. And creating that speak up culture where people can come to you, and this was said at the session before this, where people feel like they're able to come to you with problems, is really, really key. So I hope you're writing it down. Yes, please.
When you do participate in Privacy Awareness Week as a corporation, you sign up, and they actually put your company logo on the website as well. So it's a bit of promotion as well. And if you are ever in the unfortunate situation of being in front of a regulator, it is something good to refer to and say, yes, we've actually conducted training, we've been part of this.
And I think the nuance here is understanding there's the law and what you must do, but understanding the regulatory expectations is really important too, and being able to speak the language of the regulator. And that's really key too. And so, Susan, I might go to you now. One really interesting point about Covermore is just the amount of data that you hold, as well as in the work that you do with travel insurance. one thing that's happened in parallel, I think, to the reforms is the increased rise in, I call it consumer frustration. So your grandma knows about privacy. It's gone from, you know, the parliament to the pub. Your grandma, your auntie, your uncle, everyone knows about privacy. I'm curious, how's that played out for you in the context of the reforms? What are you seeing? What trends do people in the room need to be aware of? I'm curious what you've got to share.
So these tech-savvy grandmas making our lives hell. No, kidding. So yes, Zurich Covermore, we're a travel insurer, we're a global travel insurer. So we come across a lot of personal information when you're filling out your proposals, and then there's claim time as well. Often it involves medical claims and assistance. We also own a company called WTP, World Travel Protection, which provides 24/7 travel assistance. They do real-time tracking of employees, so they know where your employees are at any stage if we need to get them out of a country. And we also have doctors on the ground who, if you're ever in an unfortunate situation of being in an overseas hospital, they will actually speak to your treating practitioner and make sure you're getting the right medical assistance. So a lot of that information comes across, there's a lot of sharing. And what we've seen with the privacy reforms and people like grandmas who are savvy with ChatGTP, they're actually making more requests for their data. They're asking, and particularly at claim time when a claim's been denied. So claim's been denied, then more often than not, a complaint will come from that because they're disgruntled. Simultaneously, they'll ask a request under privacy. They want to see all documentation that claims manager used or referred to in making that decision, right? So people are becoming a lot more, aware
and frustrated. And I think we're seeing that as a trend. So just in the last couple of days, I've helped out with a number of subject matter access requests. And as Susan mentioned, they're normally linked to some other issue. It's not really about the privacy. Often it's about some other customer complaint or issue, and they're using that access request as a sort of friction point. But I think what's really relevant is that consumer frustration is linked to a couple of things, is that those things can escalate really quickly. They can then land in the OAIC's inbox as a complaint. They are difficult to manage. They are not fun. They take up a lot of time. And the other thing about the privacy reforms, I would say, is the sort of increased toolkit of the regulator. So they can now issue fines. We've seen an increase in their scrutiny and powers. They're more funded. So you can expect the regulator has matured, right? And so what might have been okay a couple of years ago is not the case. Have you seen that, like an increased scrutiny of the regulator when you're dealing with them, or has that come about in the way in which when you've reported breaches or anything like that? Have you noticed that?
I haven't, no.
I could, definitely as a data breach response lawyer and also responding to complaints and when things go wrong, absolutely, there's more scrutiny on when things go wrong. And we're going to go to Harry now. And he was feeling a bit shy being a B2B panellist. And I said that is so valuable to have you here because you can talk to us about a lot of, I think, really important things around third-party risks and a few other things. But Harry, I might get you to talk a little bit about what your business does, and also one of the new changes is the requirement under 1.6, I think it is, to now disclose in your privacy policy automated processing. Now that's coming into effect in December next year. That sounds pretty innocuous, right? You've just got to, in your privacy policy, note if you're using automated processing and a few other things. But how, is it that simple?
Sounds simple. First of all, I work for a data company called Databricks, so we provide a data intelligence platform, and we're talking about lots of data, not just terabytes or petabytes, but we're talking about exabyte scale. So a lot of top tier banks are using our software, and the most important thing is whether or not we can automate a lot of this work. Traditionally, you'd say, oh well, if we're using products like, because part of our feature set is to allow customers to use OpenAI, which everyone's aware of, or Anthropic or Meta's Llama, right? Everyone's pretty clear that that's AI, right? If we're running what they call a retrieval augmented generated model, right? A RAG or fine tuning, okay, no worries. We have to be transparent with declaring our processing, right? Especially if we're relying on it. However, a lot of businesses, I mean, if you speak to me and when you're negotiating a contract with Databricks, I'll explain to you that, hold on, Databricks has been around since 2013. We've been helping customers on the AI journey, right, with machine learning algorithms since then. So a lot of the things from insurers to banks, a lot of those processes are already automated. So you don't need to look at, all the big names like OpenAI. Look at your internal processes right now. You'll find that, because under the new amendment, I think, language, it's computer software program.
Yeah, it's quite broad. So I think, can I just put a hands up, who's mapped their automated, who's done the work? Who's looked at and worked out, do we use automated processing in our businesses? Good.
Insurers,
banks,
retail.
It's much more than AI. So the first thing to note is it's not just the use of AI, it's where you're using a computer system to make a decision about a human or in an automated way. And that legislation came about a bit about robo-debt, like that was sort of driven by that. And so that's going to take time. If you haven't done, as Catriona mentioned earlier, you need to map your data and do that compliance gap. But if you haven't done that process yet, you need to start doing it now, because how can you talk about it in your privacy policy by December if you haven't done it? And then if your privacy policy isn't up to date and it doesn't cover all of the mandatory matters, you're now up for an automatic fine. Like the OIC powers have changed, so it can issue fines and things quickly. So I think having that methodical, Catriona, your point was really good about doing that mapping now is really important around the gaps. Harry, I might stick with you, because I think one of the key issues or themes of risk that is emerging and also linked to 11.3 is third-party risks. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because you must be on that. You service some of the most biggest global big name brands. How are they assessing you on risk, and what should people be thinking about when they're engaging third parties? And I think I should just pause and say, the Privacy Act has a concept of jointly held information. Like, if you're engaging a third party, that does not allow you to just sort of think that that's their problem. Can we talk about that a little bit, and what are some tips there?
Yeah, so security, I think we discussed it like offline before, but security and privacy, it's almost one and the same, because guess what? If there's a security breach, right, the people who infiltrate you want to go high damage, and high damage means lots of people. So personal data is definitely a target, right? And so our clients, the first thing they look at, right, and same with all the businesses that you may work for, should be looking at best practices, like either a DPA in accordance with the GDPR, right? To have all those certifications from ISO 27001 to a certified, what they call a SOC 2, which certifies all of your a vendor's security controls. Because it's great that you may have internal processes to manage your internal risk, right? But no business works in isolation. You have tens, 20, or even hundreds of vendors, right? So, and you can't realistically assess every single vendor, but what you can do is make sure that every one of your vendors has your ISO certifications, right? Has your SOC 2 that's been certified by a third party, independent auditor, right? And that's the least we can do, because we can't go through everything, right?
No. And I think, look, not every vendor you're going to deal with is going to be necessarily certified to that level either, but I think it's understanding what the risks are with a vendor when you're going in with your open eyes open. Catriona, I can see you're nodding. Do you have anything more to add on third-party risks?
So we're also B2B as well as being B2C, and so we sit both using vendors, but also conscious that we are a vendor to quite a lot of customers. And the certification, I think, is definitely one of the big areas that we went down. But we were talking about how do you convince the business to, and particularly your CFO, to buy into giving you budget. And one of the big things that we managed to convince the CFO on around getting the certification is that it actually enables you to be able to get revenue. So things like big banks, government, they won't actually enter into contracts with you unless you're meeting a certain level of standards. So for we supply property related data to government and local government bodies. And one of the things they said to us, well, we want you to be at the 27,001 level of certification. We'll give you 2 years to get there, but we expect you to get there. And that unlocked revenue from government contracts and then enabled us to really get that buy-in from the business. So I think that's from a B2B perspective. And then when we're using third-party vendors, making sure that we're doing data governance and analysis, security testing, and even just reputational testing of who else has used this vendor, what do you know about them?
I think it's so important to really understand, if we take it just, let's forget about compliance and let's think about risk. Risk, your third parties are probably one of your biggest risks when it comes to privacy and cyber. Who knows who has a register of all of the third parties that they use within the business? Not a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't have a full register of everything they use or full visibility because, HR might have gone off and got something that you might have only started doing PIAs or not had a process for doing them. Many organisations do not. So that's my question to all of you. Do you have that risk register of all of the third parties that you use? And because that's a really big issue. And I might go to flybys and cover more here because, if a data breach or something happens and it's your third party systems, no one cares about the third party. It's your name on the line, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So to go back to, what I was explaining earlier around the organization, we make sure that we remove the opportunity for human errors, and that means training. And we run on a yearly basis a crisis management day where we're all locked in the room and we pretend that the privacy breach just happened and what do we do basically. And we never get the scenario in advance. So it's all the exec and some of the leadership collective from the level below, plus the technology team. And we've also got 3 judges, like a panel, who look at our reaction and what's happening. And it's an entire day where we can only do that and we can't do anything else.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because from every year, basically, we revisit our processes and our crisis management plan and how do we react, and we tweak it based on what went wrong on the day. And that gives us a really good baseline to react in the future when there's going to be a breach. Because it's not about, if, it's really about when. Yeah. And we're just prepared. And we keep getting prepared, more compliant. And we know what to do now.
I love that, Veronique. And I call that, and we in cyber world, we call it train for hard. If you are having a tea break, if you're just running through hypotheticals on a slide, that is not the same as locking the executives in the room, right? So it's a really important thing to do, to train for hard, train for the real life scenario.
I think if I jump in on that as well, I think getting your board involved in that process, like particularly if you're, say, an ASX listed company and you've got, a lot of independent board directors, and understanding the board's role in that. And we have quite a number of board members who are also executives, and so they have been executives going through that scenario, and then when they're a board member in that scenario, they want to put their executive hat on.
It's
and so actually getting your board members to be part of it, to be both engaged, but then actually understand the remit of their role. So actually we don't want you to write the comms. We're going to run that through the comms team and part of the crisis management team, and then we might get you to approve them, but we don't want you to be writing the comms in the the room with everybody.
Thanks. Sonia, sorry, I just wanted to press pause. I'm mindful we have 14 minutes left before beverages. Any questions? Privacy, one hand here. Anyone from Team Alpha, which is this side of the room? No? Anybody behind the pillar over there? You got another hand? Oh, yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Sylvia on secondment at Xero. in the global privacy team recently, so learning a lot about this as well. So your insights are really appreciated. But one thing I'm quite conscious of is, you know, as you guys are probably aware, a lot of the breaches and things can happen, you know, because someone, you know, had a generic password or that got disclosed. So quite simple. So I guess from a practical point of view, do those third party, you know, SOC 2, ISO, etc., you know, look through, you know, how you can get in through the bathroom window. Like the house is secure and it's looking at all that, and then it's got insulation and locks everywhere. But that sort of back way into it, that's sort of innocuous and something that maybe isn't as much of a focus. Like what's protecting you against that, or how do you analyse that risk? How do you prevent that, especially from that third party risk? Because you're not the one in the simulation, you know, that Flybuys is running. You're quite removed, and the contract could be perfect, but it's not really going to stop that kind of situation happening.
I'll go to the panel.
I'm happy to answer. I'll at least give Databricks perspective. So from our perspective, we actually have annual penetration testing, right? It's conducted and it's audited. So again, you don't see it with many vendors, but if you can ask your vendor to say, look, can we get a pen test summary, or actually, this is probably very bad, but conduct a penetration test, right? That really helps. But ultimately, look, I think as we noted before, you're on the hook, and Xero's on the hook, right? And you can't really use a contract, and it's something that it's going to happen eventually, but at least, again, another certification is a pen test summary. Look for it.
And Susan, did you want to? Sorry, I just
I
wanted
was going to say that when you're negotiating with your third party, I put that in. I say that we have conduct a pen test. Our IT like to conduct it themselves. So yeah, put it in there, and also privacy law compliance. I put there. I say that you have to comply with these laws, and then I also put in a data breach section. I don't want to be surprised, right? So I put in there who does what and how the reporting's going to be, because what you don't want, if there is a data breach and you're sharing data, right? Accessing, sharing, transferring, you don't want that vendor, third-party vendor, to go to the regulator before you, or worse, go to the media, right? You need to have, you have to have that there, and you have to make sure, I always make sure that they understand that. I actually speak to them about it. Yeah, and here is my number.
And I think the vendor DD, before you get to the contracting piece, so we've got a vendor due diligence that we ask, do you have a data breach response plan that sort of complies with the OAP guidance? Do you train your staff? And we did this for a client, and it was really apparent that the vendor they were choosing they were very immature, they didn't really understand the Australian market, and so we put in a whole bunch of remediations around that. They did have a data breach, and that was front page news. But we were able to go to the media and said we knew the lay of the land in terms of that data, and were able to manage that. But you've got to ask, in addition to the contract, you've got to do the technical and organisational human due diligence, and it doesn't have to be big, right, Susan? It can just be a couple of questions. Do the couple of questions. I might stick with you if that's all right, and I want to use the last sort of 10 minutes to talk. We've sort of covered the key reforms, and happy to talk about the statutory tort and other things as well, but I wanted to talk about what's not covered. So, in fact, quicker times around data breach reporting is not covered. The right of erasure, not covered yet. That's tranche 2. As a global organisation, how are you managing that? Like, are you practically, are you just, what are your thoughts on that? How do you manage that when you spoke about consumer expectations having changed?
Yeah, sure. So being a global company, we have I manage Asia Pacific, but then we've also got LATAM, we've got North America, we've got Europe, UK as well. And what we do is a global policy will be handed down from Zurich, but then we have addendums. And when I say global policy, I should just backtrack. We choose the highest watermark. And in this industry, like in this area, it's the UK, it's the GDPR. So we go with that. not for reporting. So they have the 72-hour reporting timeframes. We use that for collating our information, getting our ducks in a row. Everyone has to move quickly. And because we are a global company, there can be times when UK data is involved, right? And so they have to, go off. And we work with the insurer, Zurich insurer, they're APRA regulated. They have a 72-hour requirement of notification as well. So if you have that higher watermark, the higher standard, you can reach the other regions that have a less stringent time frame. And that seems to work for us. And so we have a global policy and we have addendum for each of the countries. So I'll have Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Thailand, blah, blah, blah.
And it's almost like by doing that, you're training your business and organisation for those reforms that are hopefully going to come into play. Yeah. And Veronique, I might ask you, because Flybuys is obviously quite mature in where it's at. Tranche 2, which is not yet law, but there's a lot in there. What are you doing to prepare for it, or what does that look like for you organisationally?
Yeah, sure. Well, we're focusing on best practice, and we're focusing on the member's journey, the member's experience, so the loyalty member. And we're really focusing all our efforts on making sure that there's clear communication with our members about what data we're collecting. There's transparency about the treatment of data. And one of the other ideas that I want to investigate, see how we can do that, is also looking at maybe getting a data analyst in to do a data audit about where our data is stored, how long do we keep it for, and how often do we purge. That's like on my list before the end of the year. We'll see if I can do that.
Isn't it? It's a really hard challenge, right?
Yes.
Where it is so difficult. And I mean, what I'd say to that is that it's a technical and human process. You can do the technical audit, right, of like where is the data stored, but also like that speaking to the business around what is it that you collect, what is this stuff over here.
But and just be prepared that will take at least
that will take
year.
ages. Yeah. So what we'll do, we'll probably start with business units, like those that are the most relevant to our members, and then refine the process as we progress. Yeah. Because we're also really conscious that we've just had the ACCC supermarket inquiry. And it's all around transparency, around what is being offered to the members, around loyalty programs. So for us, it's a key focus. Members first. How do we improve their experience? How do we make sure that we're fully transparent about what we're doing here?
Katrina, I might just go to you and go, like, how do you deal with the frustrations of the reforms? What are your thoughts on this? These reforms have just sort of been dragging along and some of them have come into play, but not the sort of big ones. How do you deal with that in terms of budget? And
I'll answer that question, but I might just add on to yours first, which is around the data mapping, which one sort of very top tip that I learned through the experience of data mapping is that when you go out to the vendors, if you're going to use a software tool for data mapping, they charge you more the more data that they are mapping, unsurprisingly. And so actually being able to figure out where your personal data sits within the different buckets within the organisation and then run your software tools over that. Sure, you could run it across the whole business and that would maybe be belt and braces and absolute best practice. But if you're doing a cost analysis, figuring out from a manual process where your personal data sits and then applying the software to that literally saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay, yeah. And sure, you can then do the next layer afterwards. But just a top tip that we learnt, thinking that we will just implement data mapping, and actually as we got into it, that was something that we learnt from it.
It's a great tip. Thank you, Katrina.
And then on disappointments, so as we had this big rock and we got like the business really excited about it and we had it like launched and the CEO was backing it and all of that, and then suddenly we felt like sort of the boy that cried wolf, because we were like, well, it's kind of come in but not really, and there's bits but not as much as we thought. And actually for us, phase 2 and consent management in particular is going to be a really big piece for us, because we operate primarily with an implied consent versus express consent.
Yes.
So massive changes to come, but when?
And I think what we do want to emphasise here is don't go out and necessarily change your consents to something that hasn't happened yet, right? Like that's not what we're saying. We're saying those other issues around, responses to data breaches, those things. But there's a whole bunch of things that haven't come into play yet, so you don't necessarily
And we've focused on the things that either have come in through phase 1 or where we think we can make improvements on the current privacy regime. So we've done a big piece around data retention. That was launched our new policy this week. but doing things that like improve the current privacy regime
Yeah.
or prepare us like data mapping for what we know is going to come.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, looked at actually what parts of the business would benefit from changes that are going to come further down the track anyway.
Yeah.
And there's business rationale, there's business benefit to doing them now because you can get your stakeholders to buy into that. So we've changed some of our consent regime because there is a business revenue driver to having express consent rather than implied consent for certain parts of the business.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do it legally yet, but we can do it because there's a revenue drive and you can get your business stakeholders buy-in.
Yeah. Now, we don't have too much time left, so what I might do is finish on a top tip. So I'll get the panel to think about one tip that they would like to share in terms of the Privacy Act reforms. Just on the data mapping, my team developed a sort of human software tool called Maddox Adapt, and I'm really happy to give that to people complimentary. If you want to use that within your business to survey your organisation, to understand what data you're collecting, come and see me because I'm really passionate about this. It's really important, and I know that it's difficult to do. So if that's something you're interested in, come and chat. But I'll go to the team, and it's been an amazing discussion, and thank you for being so open and honest. Veronique, top tip, one thing, what should people be doing?
Privacy by design. Make sure that in every single decision around design perspective, you know, there is somebody sitting in the room talking about what does that mean from a privacy perspective. Whatever product that comes out, it's got to be thought of from a privacy angle, and what does that mean?
Yeah. So if you don't need to collect it in the first place, don't collect it. Don't have that field on the form. Why are we collecting date of birth still? No, don't need it. Don't put it on the form. Thank you.
I'd say get everyone involved, have privacy champions in lines of business.
Love it.
One thing I've done is I get our CIO to speak to our Chief Risk Officer, our CRO. Previously they were siloed. I'm like, guys, we have to work together. Two sides of the coin here. There's legal as well. It's not just a legal problem. Just because we're lumped with, we get the lovely name of privacy officer, it doesn't stop with us. So have those ambassadors in the business. And one step further is to put it in people's KPIs. Right? And I'm doing this because I run boards, and our boards need to know about it. It's one of our agenda items. They have to get involved, and when you have it linked to people's KPIs, people's responses aligned with their pocket, right? So they do get
Chef's kiss.
Yes.
Chef's kiss. Like privacy champions, one of the organisations we worked with, big global, big Australian retailer, having their chief customer officer, the privacy officer, man, that changed everything. That changed the culture of the organisation. Chef's kiss to that. Get it out of IT and legal, get it into the business. Harry, you better be, I hope you're like...
I can't top that, but...
no pressure.
From a vendor perspective, right, if deal with the European vendors, because they've got, as you mentioned earlier, GDPR is a gold standard. So if you can sneak in, enter into a DPA with a vendor and reference the Privacy Act, you're actually miles ahead and ready for the next tranches. So that's my tip for everyone. Look for a DPA and add the Privacy Act as part of your contracts with your vendors.
Yeah, looking at those technical and organisational measures in those GDPR standards is really good. Katrina, so many great tips from you. I can't wait to hear your top one.
Well, extending from yours, I think make best friends with someone in the tech team who can speak tech and English and lawyer. Not asking for much, but if you can find your guy or gal in the tech team who can help you, it will help build traction, but it will also help you understand everyone else in the meeting who's speaking tech that you're not following along.
These guys are so good. So I have a client who, and it's a really great story and I'm going to boast, but they were both at different clients. One was the CIO, one was the head of risk. They ended up together at the same client. They both looked at each other and said, we need help. Let's call, and they both said my name at the same time. But that project or that business has done so well because the CIO and legal are working together in tandem, and we have made so much progress. That is an amazing tip. And if you want to use Katrina's big rock idea, just take the, it's fantastic because it gives it puts structure around it, and it really helps with that collaboration. I'm really good at ending on time, and we have.
Excellent. All right, but we have 5 experts on the stage. Any last question? Last question about privacy. Going once, going twice. Sold. Big round of applause, please, for our panel. Sonia, Katrina, Harry, Susan, Veronique. Fantastic way to end the NextGen GC Summit. Thank you so much. And straight to the bar. The photo booth is already packed up. The sponsors are already packing up, but the bar is now open. Enjoy. Thank you so much.